in those conversations that you have with your patient once you're onboarding them, are they ever telling you that they're afraid of death?
Every once in a while, it does happen where someone's like, I'm really scared. Generally, it comes out over time in conversation where they'll have a little bit of a breakdown. I just feel afraid, or I feel overwhelmed. This feels scary. And I love those times because I say, congratulations. Like, you're the most normal person on planet Earth. And the fact that you're even willing to say that makes it so much better for you. People who are willing to say the truth, no matter how scary it is, usually die more peacefully.
Welcome back to the Checkup. Today, we're leading into a conversation most of us love to ignore: what the end of life really looks and feels like. My guest is Julie McFadden, RN, better known online as Hospice Nurse Julie. After nearly a decade in the ICU, she moved to hospice care and started sharing unfiltered bedside lessons to millions on TikTok. Her New York Times best-selling book, Nothing to Fear, strips away the mystery surrounding dying and shows families how to turn those final days into something peaceful, prepared, and even meaningful. The new version even comes with a journal to help you process you or someone else's end-of-life journey. In this episode, we'll debunk the biggest myths about dying, unpack what a good death actually entails, and explore how facing mortality head-on can actually make living healthier and happier. Take a deep breath. This one's real, raw, and absolutely necessary, so let's get started. They say there's only two things in life that are guaranteed: death and taxes. And I consider you part of the problem.
I'm sorry. It's true.
In all seriousness, though, you've been around a lot of death, and you've done it from a perspective of understanding. At least you've presented the experience of death through understanding. What's your relationship with death as it's evolved in your career?
I think I realized, or did realize, it took me some time. So I've been a nurse for 16 years. I didn't always have this really open idea around death, nor did I really even think about it, especially in the beginning of my career when I was an ICU nurse. But over time, as you know, I would see death in the ICU, whether I thought about it or not, right? People would die, and we were trying so hard to make sure they didn't. And they still
sometimes
did.
To a fault.
Sometimes to a fault. Oh, yeah. I could talk forever about that. Hence why I was like, people are going to die. This is what I'm seeing in my life now as a nurse. And if that is the case, there has to be a better way to do this than what we're doing in the ICU in particular. So then I became a hospice nurse, and then seeing how people died, what I would consider like a natural death from something, right? But they're naturally dying. It just opened my eyes to how our bodies seem to be biologically able to do it and to help us do it. And that has made me embrace the idea that we all die.
How does the career pivot happen from going into the selection of ICU nurse to now hospice nurse?
Being an ICU nurse, that's how it pivoted. I had a plan. I was going to be an ICU nurse. I was going to go back to school for anesthesia. I was going to work as an ICU nurse for 2 years.
CRNA.
Yes. Yeah. Then CRNA. And then after 2 years of being in the ICU, I was like, I don't know anything. I could never go back to school yet. Like, I need to keep doing this and like learning. So I did that. And then after another 2 years, I was like, my soul is dead. I'm dying a slow, miserable death.
Okay. Why?
I don't know why. I think it was like, my ego wanted the ICU. I wanted to say I was an ICU nurse at the best hospital in the country, and like, look at me. And I didn't realize I was doing that until I did it, right? Mm-hmm. And looking back, that's why I chose the ICU. Mm. And it just felt so impersonal most of the time. My patients were mostly sedated and intubated and on a bunch of machines and a bunch of medications. And it was like, hurry, hurry, hurry. Quick, like really task oriented. And I kept thinking like, I want to know this patient. I want to know the family. I want time to talk to them. This is really scary for them. This is really serious. And we are not openly discussing like what really is going on. We are like talking about little things like their creatinine numbers that day are trending up and trending down. And the family has no idea what that means, except for maybe that's good. But meanwhile, they have pancreatic cancer. Their surgery failed. They haven't had chemo or radiation yet. They likely aren't going to get out of the ICU. And even if they did, they'd probably still die in 6 months because they have pancreatic cancer. I mean, don't get me started, right? So it was like over time, I started seeing
the patterns emerge.
Yeah. And I was like, I can't keep doing this.
That's got to be a scary thing to have put so much time into a career and realize perhaps intentions were good.
Yeah.
But perhaps a lack of introspection about knowing yourself early on led you down the path that you didn't want to be on. Is that scary?
Yeah, it was very scary. I really thought I made a wrong career choice and like, now what am I going to do? Because nursing was my second degree. So I already.
What was the first?
I had a degree in psychology.
Okay.
So I was going to maybe go into
so,
the
all right,
therapy
a little bit of the foreshadowing was happening
Yes.
there. Okay.
So it was scary. And it still took me a good 3 or 4 more years in the ICU to finally just take the plunge. Like people were like, how'd you do it? What'd you do? I'm like, I literally just quit my job and applied for a hospice nursing job that said must have experience. And I didn't. And I applied anyway. And
well, you had experience.
Well, must have hospice nurse experience. They wanted hospice experience, which I didn't have. But I just went to the interview
the closest
and said,
next thing is ICU experience. Perhaps even to a higher level from a functional capacity.
I think ICU nurses make great hospice nurses because we've already seen the opposite side. I can talk to patients about the full gamut of what they probably have experienced. If they didn't go on hospice, what they would be experiencing. You know, I feel like it really has helped me be a great hospice nurse.
Did any of your colleagues while you were an ICU nurse say, hey, you're really good at this other thing? Did they catch on, or were they just supportive of your choice because they're your friends?
They really didn't say anything to me about it. I think we were all like, all had blinders on. I mean, I remember being in the ICU and having one doctor who was rounding, one attending doctor. Her name was Rebecca. And she was really good at talking to families about death and dying and family meetings. And that's one of my stories I talk about in my book is this one patient that I finally stood up for and said, like, I think we need to have a family meeting. Like, I think this person's dying and we need to talk about it, right? Mm-hmm. Not I think. I mean, we all knew. We just weren't saying anything.
Sure.
And then we did, and the family took them off machines and they died. And it was a profound experience for me. But my whole point is this doctor that was rounding in the ICU for a month, she was really good at doing that and talking to people about death and dying. And I remember thinking, I want to do that. That is what I want to do. I want to be like her. And then I realized it's really hard, at least for me, to have the time to do that. So if I don't have the time to do that in the ICU and no one's really standing behind me to help me do that, then I need to switch it up.
What did Rebecca do well?
Took time and spoke to people not in medical terms, in very plain English, I guess. And
that's something that you say in the book, to not use euphemisms.
Yeah.
To be a little bit more straightforward in the language. What's an example of that?
I think in the ICU, an example would be they most likely aren't going to get better. They most likely won't get out of the ICU. If they do, here's the journey that's ahead. And even with that, we don't know what will happen after that. If you know they're going to die, how would you like them to die? Would you like them to be here? Would you like them to go home? What would you like? And I think that's a weird example in the ICU, but to me, I think we need to talk about that a little more in the oncology world about, I think we need to be a little more straightforward about prognoses and treatment, standards of treatment. Then after the standard of treatment, if it's not working or it fails or cancer comes back, like people need to know, I think, in very straightforward terms that they will likely die from this disease, and it's likely going to be in this amount of time. And if you know that, how would you like your life to look?
Right. What do you say to critics that perhaps call you jaded in that mindset? Like, you've just seen so much death. Of course you think they're going to die, but my loved one's different.
Fun or not fun, funny. I don't think that's a jaded response. I think that's a educated response, and someone who has been in the healthcare world long enough, still not that long, 16 years, but long enough to say, I think you are owed that explanation. It's totally fine if you don't want to take that. I just want you to understand what we generally see. Because what we generally see is this. So I want you to know that these are all the things you can do. And one of those things would be to go on hospice or not do that extra round of chemo or not do that clinical treatment. And I think more people would choose to go, I guess hospice is the option, but just choose not to treat the cancer, because I think a lot of people they just don't fully understand that they're going to die.
Well, we're all going to die.
We're all going to die. We're all going to die.
That's a tough thing to accept at times.
What do you think? Can I ask that? Like, what do you think? Yeah. Do you think I'm being jaded by saying something like that?
I think not at all. In fact, a lot of your mindset and the way that you approach talking about death is how I like to do it in the hospital. Sometimes I have met families that believe on a spiritual level, on a religious level, that I am disconnected because I just believe in the science. Oh. And I'm missing the miraculous world, the emotional component of it. But to me, if I start mixing in emotions into my prognosis, I'm giving you a less accurate prognosis. So I try and explain to those patients that I'm not being emotionless. I'm trying to be as factual, and then we can have the emotion to support afterwards.
Yes.
So I agree with you, but I'm just curious how you approach those who have skepticism of someone who experiences death so often that perhaps you think, well, everyone's going to die, so you don't understand how hard this is.
Yeah. And what was that? What's the word? Like, I have a little bit of an edge, I think, because I'm usually talking to people who are already thinking about going on hospice, right? So I'm not usually talking to them when they're at the oncologist office with the, but I would like to. I maybe not me personally, but I would like to talk to other healthcare workers to say, I think we should word this differently.
Well, I think a prime example of that is we do something called Medicare annual wellness visits, where you're not supposed to do a physical. You're not supposed to actually examine the patient and listen to their heart, lungs. You're supposed to just have a conversation about their specialists, their blood work, their screenings, their preventive stuff, but also their end-of-life care, their pulse, filling out this paperwork, explaining to them options. And it's supposed to be done at a time where it's not emergent. And a lot of people get uncomfortable and uneasy with that conversation. Have you ever explored perhaps participating in that to some degree or educating on that to some degree?
This is why I'm here, Dr. Mike. I mean, I would love to. I have not explored that. But even as I'm talking to you, I'm thinking like, I feel we need more voices.
Well, because we don't do a good job at it.
Yeah.
We're slammed.
Do you feel like that's because of time? A lot of times that's how I felt in the ICU was and maybe I'm just passing the buck here, I don't know. But I felt like I didn't have enough time. It takes time, I think, to sit down, be empathetic, show people that you're not just here to go, you're there to, and you don't have the time sometimes.
Yeah, the way the system is set up right now, you definitely don't have the time, and that is a huge factor.
Yeah.
But also there's a emotional component that perhaps some doctors want to block that off because they feel uneasy with it.
Yeah.
And then also there's a knowledge component as well. If they didn't spend time in the ICU, if they also haven't lost a loved one, they perhaps can find it more difficult to empathize in the situation. So they avoid the uncomfortable conversation. They say, hey, we have this form, I'm giving you a brochure and let's move on.
Just check it out. Yeah. Check it out. Fill it out when you're at home. Or they say, I think a lot of times too, explaining the pulse, they'll be like, if something happens to you, do you want us to do everything we can to save your life?
Yeah.
And they go, yes. They don't explain what that means.
Yeah.
I think that's the big thing of what I want people to understand from my videos or my book or wherever you see me is that education's key. People need to understand the progression of whatever disease they get diagnosed with. And I think we do a really poor job in healthcare of really helping people understand what it looks like to quote unquote like battle cancer.
Right.
There are many things that go into it, and you have choices. You have choices, and not just because you choose treatment, which P.S. if I got diagnosed with something tomorrow, I would do the standard treatment. I would most likely, depending on what it is, but most likely. But just because you choose treatment doesn't necessarily mean life or means you live longer. And I think people don't know that, and we don't do a good job at explaining that.
Yeah. Thinking back to my time in the ICU, I remember the most extreme conversations or dramatic conversations were happening during cardiac arrest, during a code blue, of trying to encourage a family to stop CPR.
Yes.
And that happens so often. Sometimes I'm running in the hallway with a family trying to explain that on the go and slow it down as much as possible in the midst of running a code. Because ultimately you're hurting the patient.
Yep.
In so many, you can only throw so many statistics at someone when they're in that moment, explaining that, look, based on the quality of life they had before this, now the fact that their heart has stopped, bringing them potentially back will only bring them to a lower level of quality of life, even if we do. So like explaining to them all of those things is hard to do in a short time. Mm-hmm. It's hard to forge some sort of connection as a hospice physician or nurse. You perhaps haven't had a lot of time with that family. All of it is set up against you. But perhaps in the hospice space, because people are already coming in with a certain mindset, do you find that conversation to be more productive?
Way more productive.
Yeah.
That's what I mean by I have an edge. Being a hospice nurse and all the educating I do when I'm actually being a nurse, not just online, but being a nurse and with families, I have a lot of time, and they're not always prepared, but they're usually a little more open about talking about it.
How would you explain what hospice is to me as if I'm in 8th grade?
Hospice is a program that helps people during their end of life. So we help you live out the rest of your life. To me, hospice is about living when you're dying, when we know you're dying and we know you're dying somewhat soon. It's a program that helps you do what you want before you die.
You get to make choices. You get to advocate for yourself. Do you think the fact that so many of us have a fear of dying, that it's actually preventing us from living fully?
Yes.
Or is that too philosophical, movie quote-esque?
I mean, it is philosophical and movie quote-esque. That's why even me saying hospice is about living, it feels so, I usually always say like as cheesy as it sounds, but I stopped because it's true. It is cheesy, but it's true. I also feel like contemplating your own mortality on a daily basis, which I do even more sometimes than just daily, is not as morbid as you think. It frees me. It helps me remember what's important in life. And it makes me live more freely, more fully. That's why I'm so passionate about it. Like truly, contemplating my own life on a daily basis has helped me live.
Wow. So you say death is not the worst thing. What's the worst thing?
Suffering. Suffering is far, far worse. And I've experienced that years after years after years in the ICU when we kept trying to keep people alive. The suffering that existed was so painful. Like we were talking earlier, it's hard for me to watch the show The Pit because I'm like, just takes me back to those times where it's like, this is too much to watch.
Well, because if you're not the one getting the morning 5 a.m. wake-ups to draw an ABG, to change your vent settings, to do oral care, all those things, you just think, oh, the person's alive and they're good and we're keeping them alive and comfortable. It's not. Can you paint a more realistic picture of what actually happens when you're in an ICU setting?
So it depends. But if you're the person I'm talking about, which is someone who has been having complication after complication, they've been in the ICU for 3 months, they're on pressors, which is medication that constricts your blood vessels. You usually start losing toes and fingers. We don't take them off yet because you're not healthy enough to even go to surgery to get your toes amputated or your fingers amputated, but they turn black. They're dead. They're necrotic. That's one of the main, not one of the main things, but those are the things that stick with me. Doing wound care on patients, shriveled up, black, raisin-like toes that are never going to come back. Obviously, we'd have to amputate them eventually. That's one of the main things we'd see, pneumonia, being trached, then the trach getting infected, feeding tubes, TPN, people getting bloated. I mean, you don't look like a human being anymore. Their blood pressure drops, and then the vasopressors aren't working. So then we pump them full of fluid, but then their body can't handle the fluids. Then we diurese them, and it's just this cycle. And the family doesn't get what's happening, right? The family doesn't get it, and it's all sad. Skin breakdown on the back. On the back. No matter how much we turn someone, if they're laying in bed for 3 months, and the skin's an organ. Right? Their skin's an organ, the body's shutting down, so their skin is not going to be doing what it's supposed to be doing. So wounds develop. I don't know if they still do this, but we used to have, does everyone get Flexaseal still?
Yeah. I mean, not everyone, but
people
a lot.
I just remember we used to get
That's a rectal tube for folks.
A rectal tube to catch stool, diarrhea or something if they're having it too. But then they would get wounds in their rectum, like things like that, where you're just like, what are we doing? Yeah. What are we doing?
Do you think it's because people have a hard time letting go? Is it because they're overly optimistic? Communication breakdown? What do you think is happening?
I think it's communication breakdown. I think we work within a system and we're taught within that system too, as healthcare providers, one, that we're supposed to be saving people. And we're not really talking about end of life. I don't think it could be different now, but 10 years ago during rounds, never were we ever mentioning end of life or should we have a family meeting? Is this a little too much? Are they really going to get better? And I started realizing that as the nurse, I could speak up and my voice mattered and it made changes and things happened when I spoke up. Not like when I spoke up, but just that,
when you introduced the conversation.
Yeah, no one's talking about it because no one's talking about it. Not because they don't want to.
Right.
So, I think it's more of a communication thing. I think no one wants to bring it up or no one's really thinking about it because we have such blinders on, right? Also, doctors and nurses, it's like the nephrologist comes in and they're working on that. The pulmonologist comes in and they're working on the lungs. Everyone thinks it's someone else's job to bring up its end of life. Right?
Which is why I'm so sad for the decrease excitement surrounding primary care.
Yeah.
Because when you have a primary care doctor who's going to bat for you in the ER, in the ICU, who understands what your wishes were because they've been treating you for decades as part of continuity of care, now you have an advocate who understands the science and understands what's happening. Perhaps your family also knows them, trusts them to make the right decision as opposed to, this is a nocturnist that I met last night, and now they're deciding whether or not my loved one is actually going to live or die.
And they don't want to listen to you anyway if they don't know you or trust you. P.S. My family doctor that I've known since I've been little came to my book signing. And we got a picture together.
See?
Dr. Almquist.
But do you see, we're losing that, and partially it's due to systemic changes, incentive changing, students not selecting the field for fear of not making enough money to make ends meet, which is crazy. But we need to bring back the love for primary care because I think it addresses some of that in this spectrum. Also, when you have the lower ends of reimbursement for psychiatry, family medicine, pediatrics, you're going to have students that perhaps don't want those specialties but fall into those specialties. They're not excited about those specialties. They're not going to be the ones that are going to go above and beyond to have the conversations about end of life care, to go to bat for their patients. So I want to make family medicine sexy again.
Yes.
For lack of a better term.
So many inappropriate things I was going to say, but I won't. I won't do it. I mean, well, what I was going to say was about I do feel like you have to. Do you think anyone can be good at communicating? Because I do feel like there are just some people, I hear some hospice nurses and I'm kind of like, and no judgment. I mean, I'm always going to bat for nurses, but sometimes I hear people talk and I'm like, girl, you got to learn how to talk to
What
people.
are some mistakes that you've seen them make?
Just being cold, not fully explaining something. So just being like, they're actively dying. We start morphine. They need morphine because they're actively dying. One, that's not true. Two, the family doesn't know what actively dying is. They're scared of morphine. Like, you need to do a little more talking, you know, and they don't realize that or I don't know. I don't know what they're thinking actually, but.
I mean, the question you posed is, are there people who are just not good at communicating? Yes. Are there people who are naturally weaker than others? Yes. But can they work out and get stronger? They can.
Yeah, they can.
Will they be slightly weaker than the person who's genetically more gifted in that?
Yeah.
Yes, but that's okay. So I think everyone can improve their communication, but there are some people who are naturally better at it. Just like you didn't feel a fit with some of the hands-on work related to the ICU, but you felt more comfortable in the communication aspect.
Yep.
So there are obviously zones for people to fit into more naturally, which is why when med students or let's say even high school students say, what specialty should I become? Should I become a doctor? Should I become a nurse? It's like, well, find what your passion is, but don't end there because a lot of people are like, chase your passion. Chase your passion and what matches your skill set. Like that part is often left out. Because if you just chase passion without understanding who you are, what you're good at, where you're comfortable, that's not going to bode well for the majority of people.
It is not going to. I mean, I'm living case right there. Like, chase my passion. I thought for sure I was chasing my passion when I ended up in the ICU, which again, like everything, I'm okay with where I'm at now because I feel like it's really shaped me.
Of course.
I definitely was blindsided and like, what am I doing here? This was
What takeaways have you changed in your own life after witnessing so much death?
I think one of the most wonderful things I've learned just when I became a new hospice nurse was, like I said, the body seemed to help us die. Like I've seen many people have zero medications given. Not that I'm anti-medication at all, but it was amazing to me because I was so used to having to do so much to keep people alive, right? To then seeing people die these very peaceful, natural deaths. And it seemed like they didn't need anything. The body made them not hungry and thirsty. They slept all the time. They weren't having pain. They weren't having symptoms, and they just naturally died. And it really, really made me feel not afraid of death. So I have many reasons why I don't fear death. And by the way, I still do-ish. Like will have a human experience. You know, if I get diagnosed with something terminal tomorrow, I will still feel afraid and angry and sad and peaceful and, you know, all the gamut of human emotions. But generally speaking, I don't feel afraid for many like mystical reasons. But the main reason is just through watching so much death, seeing how well our body takes care of us and seeing how well our body seems like it's built to be able to do this. And the less we mess with that, the better it usually goes. And that has changed everything for me.
So why do you think sometimes death is more scary than other times? For example, I've run into some pretty dangerous situations that were stupid to defend my friends. For example, where like I should have never been involved. We should have all flight instead of fight. And yet, on the other hand, if you have me rappelling off a mountain, totally safe because it's plugged in, it's with experts, etc. I am so afraid as if my life is ending. I'm getting vertigo. It's both death.
Right?
In both scenarios, but why is it such a different experience?
Well, one, I think, in your specific circumstances.
I'm just giving that as an example.
Yeah. I mean, I think because one is like your adrenaline's pumping and you are loyal and you're saving your friends. The other one, you're in fight or flight and your body's saying, hey, you're going to die, you're going to die, you're going to die. So that's from those two circumstances. But I think in general, the unknown is scary. And this is the ultimate unknown. What happens after we die? Leaving our loved ones, even the progression of a disease, or what is it going to be like to die? So many people tell me, I'm not afraid to die, but I'm afraid of what I'm going to die from or if I'm going to suffer. People also associate dying with suffering, which of course that can happen depending on how you die, right? But generally speaking, there are certain diseases, certain things you might get diagnosed with, and that will likely lead to your death. And we know how that death looks, and we know how to treat it. We know how to help with the symptoms. And dying itself, like, doesn't really cause pain. People get so mad when I say that. Dying a natural death on hospice, technically, if you're just doing that, is not necessarily painful. Diseases you are dying from can cause pain. But like I said, when I was saying like someone's not eating, sleeping all the time, not drinking water, they are not like writhing in pain just because of that. If someone's ever in pain, it's usually because of a certain disease they have that's causing pain. I'm not sure where I was going with that, but I think generally speaking, people associate suffering with death, which makes them feel scared. And that's just not always the case.
What do you think people's biggest misconception about the last few moments of life are?
Oh man, movies have done us a disservice because many people think the last few moments are someone giving a monologue of like, I love you, this and this and this and this and this, and then like close their eyes and then they're dead. And that is never how it is. I don't think I've ever seen that happen. People have told me it has happened to them. So, okay.
But you're skeptical.
I have never seen it happen. My most popular videos that I also get the most heat for are the ones when I show real life actively dying, people who are in their last moments dying, what it really looks like. I get these from followers. I get permission. People think I'm doing like, some people love it. A lot of people hate it. But it's because people don't know what it looks like when someone is actively dying in those last few moments. And when they see it and it's their loved one, they were suffering. No one did anything. They looked awful. They were breathing like they were suffocating. And all of those things are usually just what actively dying looks like. You just don't know it. So you don't know that your loved one's going to have changes in breathing. You don't know that terminal secretions are not coming from the lungs and they're not like suffocating to death. You don't know because no one's told you. So I think the biggest myth is that, actively dying looks beautiful and it's going to look peaceful and your loved one's going to look just like they always looked, when really they're going to look a lot different. They're going to sound a lot different. They're likely not going to be conscious. And it's going to be hard to see that. But the more we know, I think the less we fear.
Hospice officially begins when the prognosis is made of 6 months approximation. Is that correct?
Yeah.
From like a insurance paperwork side of
Yes.
things. Once you enter a person's life at that stage, what conversations are you having with the person?
Well, you do, at least for me, this is what I do. You do a hospice admission, which usually takes hours. And I start off explaining everything they're going to get from hospice. And then everything they're going to lose once they get on hospice, because you do quote unquote lose things. Hospice gives you a big benefit of what they will give you, which I go into. And then but you also lose the right to go to the hospital, to be admitted, to get scans, to get chemo, to get radiation. Like, you're not supposed to do that anymore. You can't do both, right? So I do a lot of explaining.
But there's a point to that. Because some people might hear that and say, whoa, you're not going to help that person?
No, there's not usually more to do. Exactly. By the time they come onto hospice, there usually isn't radiation or chemo to do. Or they've already done all they can do. And technically what I always say to my patients is, listen, no one's going to chain you to your house and say you can't go to the hospital. If you want to go. You'll just get taken off hospice. You can't do both. Hospice is basically saying, hey, we're going to pay for all of this stuff over here, so we're not going to pay for this stuff over here. And this stuff over here is hospital stuff. So we're going to help you be at home, be comfortable, live out your life. So I go into like all of the nitty gritty, I wouldn't say boring, but it could be boring stuff about like what we're really going to do for them. And then I usually talk about their specific disease and what I've witnessed caring for people with their specific disease, how we help them, what have been their main symptoms. I talk about what the average person dying looks like, right? If you have 6 months left to live, this is what you're really going to look like. This is how it's going to progress. This is how we're going to help you.
How do they receive that?
Most people are relieved. Most people are
Relieved.
so relieved that there is someone who is willing to say your death, like not go, maybe if you pass away, I'm
Tiptoeing around
usually
it.
super blunt about like saying the word death, saying the word dying, I always talk about it like an end of life journey. That's how I say it. Your end of life journey. We're all going to have one. This is yours, most likely. So this is what I've seen and this is how we can help you. And then I ask questions, and I would say like 9.9 times out of 10,
They say no question.
people are grateful that someone's willing to talk about it. I mean, there's always that like 0.1% who's like, get out of my house. You can't mention the word hospice. And I have definitely run into that. And it's okay too. I mean, we have to meet people where they're at, but I'm not going to be the one who's tiptoeing around the conversation because I've seen what that does. And it doesn't help anybody.
I'm sure it just leads to confusion, more fear,
Yeah.
more unnecessary tests, invasiveness, which is more cruelty than anything else,
Yeah. Yeah.
even though it's unintended. Natural question that I'm sure someone would think of, do people come off hospice?
Yes. People do come off hospice. So they usually come back to hospice, but they do come off. So we allow them to stay on for 6 months. At the end of 6 months, if they are still alive, we have to monitor and basically recheck them to see if they have declined more since the first time we met. Not that we want them to, but in order to stay on hospice, we have to prove to Medicare basically that they have declined and they still are appropriate for hospice. So we can re-sign them up and then they stay on for another 2 months. And then every 2 months, we have to reevaluate. So eventually people can come off hospice if they stop declining and they kind of plateau out. And there's a typical patients who do that. So I think there's two types of hospice patients. I'm being general here, but generally speaking, there's like the cancer patients, and then there's the chronic life-limiting illness patients like COPD, CHF, Alzheimer's disease. And those patients will have exacerbations where they're really looking like they're close to death.
Right.
So they come onto hospice and they kind of crawl back up and then they plateau out. And those patients can come off hospice.
What about people who have fears of the financial strain that this could cause?
It's a real fear.
What is the typical, like, is this something that's covered, generally speaking?
So hospice will be covered. They don't have to fear that hospice won't be covered by Medicare or some type of insurance. Very rarely are there out of cost for actual hospice care.
What does hospice care entail?
Exactly. So that entails a team of people, a doctor, a nurse, a social worker, a home health aide, a chaplain, a volunteer. There's a big team of people that will be your team and they will come to your house when you need them. Ish, because you need them every day. But Medicare is our boss, and Medicare will say how often we can be there and what we can do. We also provide equipment, supplies, medication, 24-hour service. So if you do call at 2 a.m. with an issue, a nurse can come out to see it and help you, so you don't have to go to the ER, right? However, the thing that is very expensive is the day-to-day care. Basically, under no circumstance, hospice does not provide 24-hour care. For day-to-day living, like for daily living activities, the thing that most families need, I'm supposed to change my husband who's bedbound. I can't physically do that. I'm supposed to give him all the medication. I don't feel comfortable doing that. I'm supposed to know when he's in pain and when to give the meds. I don't want to do that. Hospice doesn't care. Basically Medicare doesn't care, not hospice, but they don't provide 24-hour care. Mm-hmm. So that's where it gets really expensive. And there's no easy answer around that.
So what do families normally like to do?
They normally find someone in the family to do it, which is hard if you are a working class family because everyone's doing their thing. And people look at us like, how is this possible? And that's one of the worst parts of my job because I don't have an answer for them. There isn't an answer. Even trying to get someone in a skilled nursing facility is tough. Even if we say, oh, they can't take care of themselves, they have to go. Sometimes we will instruct families to take their loved one to the ER to get admitted into the hospital.
For disposition planning.
Yeah. Yeah. So go off hospice, go into the hospital. then they'll place you there so you can get into a skilled nursing facility. It
It's a very broken system.
really is.
How would you fix it?
I don't know. I honestly, I don't know enough to know how to fix it. I mean, I guess I would say universal healthcare and everyone gets this and everyone gets that. Everyone gets paid skilled nursing. But I don't know how
who's
to
going to
do
cover
that.
Yeah.
Right. I don't know.
Because ultimately that's still a cost that someone has to bear.
And would everyone still get it? And would we have enough people to staff that? And I mean, that's what I would love. I think on hospice, everyone should have 24-hour care. It doesn't have to be a nurse. It can be a home health aide, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I would love that. Will it happen? I mean, I probably not, but I would love it.
Yeah. That's an unfortunate part of so many factors of healthcare, that it's not enough for me to see my patient, create a good doctor-patient alliance, find out what's going on with them, give them a proper diagnosis so they understand it, the treatment plan with steps 1, 2, 3 if they don't work out. I then have to figure out if they can afford all this, the journey. I have to print their GoodRx coupon. I have to make sure that the prior authorization is done. And that's a new challenge for a lot of medical providers, because that's not something that's taught in school. And it feels it's outside of the spectrum of what you're supposed to do. But if you don't do that, you're almost not doing anything. You're ChatGPT at that point.
Yep. I know I keep asking you questions, but that's always so concerning to me. Like, how do you do that? How do you learn how to do it?
You have to learn on the fly.
Yeah.
And a lot of doctors don't learn it. And the system is set up in a way where it makes it feel like every doctor is gaslighting you, because the doctor basically has to answer to the hospital system. The hospital system has to answer to the insurer. The insurer has to answer to the government. And everyone is just passing the buck next. And no one's winning. Everyone's losing. Medical providers are burning out. Patients are feeling dissatisfaction and not cared for. The only people that are winning are the executives that are running this like it's a hedge fund. And that's where the big disconnect is. And I'm not one of these individuals that's like communism, because I came from Russia. I know what terrible idea that's like. But there's a better balance to be had. And I feel like the pendulum has swung too far the other way, where it's become very profit motive focused, as opposed to finding a balance between let's have industry, let's have patients, and find that middle ground. So I feel like that's similar to what's happening at end of life care. Just there, it's a lot scarier, I guess, to some degree, because of the unknowns.
Yeah, and if you don't do it, if you don't fill out certain things, that's the worst part of my job is the paperwork. If you make one little mistake, the family doesn't get what they need, right? Because you didn't code something right, or you didn't put it in the system right. And it's just hard. That's the worst part of my job.
So in those conversations that you have with your patient once you're onboarding them, are they ever telling you that they're afraid of death?
Yeah, sometimes. So,
or at that point, have they reconciled well with it?
No, I think what the misconception is that everyone just suddenly has like emotional maturity and can like openly talk about all their fears, you know?
Right.
So it doesn't, every once in a while it does happen where someone's like, I'm really scared, you know? Generally, it comes out over time in conversation where they'll have a little bit of a breakdown. I just feel afraid, or I feel overwhelmed. This feels scary. And I love those times, because I say, congratulations. Like, you're the most normal person on planet Earth. And the fact that you're even willing to say that makes it so much better for you. I know it might not feel like it's so much better, but just personally, from witnessing this so much, people who are willing to say the truth, no matter how scary it is, usually die more peacefully. Even if the truth is, I'm afraid, I don't want to, I'm angry that I'm dying. I'm angry. I'm so angry. I've had so many people eventually get to that, right, where they're crying and they're saying they're so angry. There is nothing better than connecting with the truth. And I think it's just so normal. Like, my book is called Nothing to Fear, but there's a caveat in there that says, like, but really it's just normal to fear. And the more we talk about how normal it is, the better things usually go.
When I was in the hospital, I remember love loving to round on my elderly patients because they always had the most epic stories. Do you get some of those in talking with them?
Yes.
Yeah.
The best thing about my job is the people I meet and the stories I hear. I go into home, like I'm home hospice. So I'm going into people's homes.
Which is a much more intimate setting than
which
the
can
hospital.
be insane and like disgusting and scary, but still amazing. But also like people's homes who they've had this home for 60 years. I kid you not. I walk in, the same furniture is there from 60 years ago. There's like plastic on it. There's like fluorescent wallpaper or like Toda. I had one lady who literally each carpet was like some kind of cat, like a cow, a zebra print, like disco balls. Her bed had a mirror at the top of it. This is an elderly woman who had a bed with a mirror at the top of her bed. Okay.
Checking herself out.
Like shimmery, glittery, blinds. So it's not all like profound. It's stuff like that too, where you're like, I love you. Who are you? What was your life like? What was this house like in the 70s? Like, please tell me everything. That is the stuff I live for.
Any wisdom that they've shared with you that stuck around?
Yeah, there's so much. There's so much. And that's another misconception that like they will just suddenly be like, here's my biggest life regret. You know, it's not usually
that doesn't
said
happen?
like
no
that.
regrets?
No, it's not said like that. It'll
is it
be
said?
like they'll be eating something like a chicken wing or something, and
And
they'll
they
be
say I
like,
shouldn't have eaten that?
"What was that?"
They say I shouldn't have eaten that?
No, they'll say, I wish I would have appreciated when I had taste. You know, like I can remember how this tastes, and it doesn't taste like that now. Like, I don't have the appetite for this anymore. Like, they finally kind of wanted something, because most people on hospice don't want to eat much, right? But when they finally have something that sounds good and they bite into it and they'll be like, oh, it just doesn't taste the same. You know, I wish I would have appreciated my taste buds, my appetite, my like how things smell. I always think about that now in my life, like appreciating how coffee smells, appreciating like me wanting fries with ranch because so many patients will say stuff like that. I wish I would have appreciated. I loved walking around my neighborhood. I loved it. I wish I would have appreciated when I could do that because I can't do it now. So it's like little things like that I mostly hear about. Regrets are they're not appreciating their like general health when they had it.
Yeah, you don't appreciate it till it's gone is a understatement. I struggle with that. Seeing my patients obviously say that they've lost something and say I should have appreciated it. And then I try and do the same. Like, I don't know, if I'm really thirsty and I have no access to water for a period of time, I'm like, oh my God, when I drink, I'm going to appreciate it so much. And maybe I do the first time I drink, but then it's gone the next day. And then it's fatiguing to constantly remind yourself, this coffee tastes so good. This weather is so nice. How do you make it a more natural feeling as opposed to forcing it to happen because of what you've seen someone else go through? Any tips on that?
You know, I mean, I don't really have that. I don't have the fatigue. I mean, I really do practice. I mean, I guess I have fatigue sometimes, right? I have to check out sometimes. I'm still human and I want to like check out on a game or like watch TV and not think about anything or feel anything. But generally speaking, I really do. And this is my practice in my everyday life for many reasons, but I really do try to live in the day, in the moment, and like start my day with really realizing how grateful and lucky I am to be healthy and in a safe place. And I really do try to practice that in the day that I'm in it. It doesn't actually get old for me for the most part.
How do you check out? What's your cheat?
Television.
Okay.
And now I have this.
Do you have junk TV that you watch?
Well, I
Or what
watch
is it?
The Office over and over and over again. It's my
great show.
comfort. It's my comfort show. But I watch a bunch of stuff. I'm a big TV girl. So TV is my really, really
Do you watch
big
any
vice.
medical shows?
No.
Enough of that, right?
Yeah, enough of that. I do watch a lot of like murder shows.
Oh, okay. That's
Yeah.
dark.
Yeah, it's dark. So I like murder mystery. I like murder. Murder mysteries. I love The Office. I have certain movies that like are my comfort movies that I like to watch over and over again. But I'm also a big movie buff.
What's your favorite movie of all time?
Oh my gosh, it's hard. It's hard. I can't pick one. Really.
Top 3? What's one in your top 10?
Okay. I'm trying
That's
to impress
easier.
everybody. So like I
You
have
don't. No, don't do that. You already did that with the ICU career, and we saw where that went.
Okay. So like one of my comforts, I wouldn't say it's the best movie of all time, but it's a comfort.
No,
thing, okay?
top 10, one.
Comfort people.
Yeah.
Twilight. I mean, Twilight's the worst movie ever made.
Isn't it?
Yeah, but I'm obsessed with it.
Why? You like the
it.
biting and the wolf?
I love the absurdity of it. Like they need each other. Like it's like so codependent and disgusting, but like I think it's hilarious, but I also love it and it's comforting to me. I can watch it and feel like comforted. But that's what I mean by like.
Okay, so it's top 10 movies of all time, Twilight.
Yeah, one of them.
That's what you're going to be remembered for.
But like another one is like Inglorious Bastards.
Oh,
right.
It's
so
funny.
Like,
I just said that to someone else that it's in my top 10, and they judged me for it, and they said that they thought it wasn't that good. Was that you, Dan?
really?
Yeah. All right, good pick. My favorite is Man on Fire. I don't know if you've seen that.
I've never seen it. I don't think.
Denzel. I'm a big Denzel fan.
Okay, me too.
Yeah. What's your favorite Denzel movie?
I'm
then?
sure I've seen it then. Flight.
I love that.
I love it because
Say I love you.
Oh, see, yours, I don't remember shit. I don't remember lines.
That's the most powerful line in the whole movie. He literally tells the flight attendant to say I love you. And he goes, what's your son's name? And she says Joshua.
Yes. Oh,
and he goes, say I love you, Joshua.
Yes.
And she's like, what?
Yes.
He's like, black box, say I love you.
Oh,
Come
yes.
on.
No. Yeah, good job.
That's the goosebump line.
It is. I just got it.
See?
Yeah, good job. I don't remember anything about anything. Like I
so
really
you don't even remember Inglorious Bastards.
No, and it's one of my comfort movies. But I could like rattle off
Also,
stuff
the
from
most
Hamlet.
violent comfort movie ever.
Exactly. That's what I
a movie
mean.
about murdering people, just comfort.
And then Twilight. Now, have you ever seen Moonlight? Moonlight's a very good movie.
No, that won an Academy Award.
Yeah,
I didn't
it's
see
very,
it.
very good.
Okay,
I like the Florida Project.
so
That can go
okay,
on.
you work with death and you relax with death. What's going on here?
I know. I need help.
Did you ever think about it?
I guess I don't think it's depressing. So truly, like being a hospice nurse is not depressing. That's just not my take. That's not a hot take of mine. That is real. It's not depressing. It's a beautiful career. I get to connect with people on a daily basis. That's what it feels like. I get to help people feel relief. I get to help people feel a little more comfortable around something so scary. It's like one of my greatest gifts in life that I get to do that. So it doesn't feel sad, doesn't feel depressing. I feel like the luckiest person ever. I would actually do it for free, not 40 hours a week for free, but I would volunteer my time as a hospice nurse 100% because I love it that much. So I don't know.
So you're like friends with death.
Ish.
You've befriended it.
Yeah. I don't want to like sugarcoat.
Are your friends scared of you?
My friends are surprised by me a little bit.
Yeah.
Like, cause in my everyday life, like you say you're a hospice nurse at like a dinner party. Most people are like, oh God, God,
Heavy.
They don't want to talk to you.
Really? I feel like it's so interesting.
Yeah, no, right? No, most people do not want to talk about it, or they just go like, or they say the whole angel thing, which is always super uncomfortable.
Well, let's get into that.
Yeah.
Tell me about the angels.
About the angel?
Yeah.
No, people think I'm an angel.
Oh,
And
well,
that's-
of course you are. But
I have seen an angel, I think. I know.
Where?
I hate saying this story. It makes me feel so embarrassed.
In New York?
No, it wasn't.
Because there's
in New
people
York.
that dress as them all the time.
It was in Los Angeles. It was by my patient's
well,
bed.
obviously, in the city of angels,
the
you
city
saw
of
an angel.
angels. I think
All right,
I saw an angel.
taking down my judgment hat. Tell me
know.
about the angel.
I get the judgment hat. So I had a patient. First off, this is my one and only miracle story where I feel like I actually witnessed a miracle, Dr. Mike, for real.
A miracle.
Yes. Hear me out. And just so you know, I am not really like this. I'm not like an angel girly. Okay.
Okay. So you're anti-angel,
I'm
for the record.
I'm just not sure. Like it's not like I study angels. Okay. I just
Is that a thing?
yes, there's people who like really believe in it. Even after my story, I'm still like, is this real?
Okay.
But listen, okay, so I experienced one miracle, has to do with the angel. A patient was coming onto service. She was a young mom. Her kids were, in my opinion, young mom. Her kids were like in their early 20s. And when I was admitting her onto hospice, she was coming from the hospital. She was actively dying in the ambulance. Changes in breathing, cyanotic. I mean, I got her oxygen. It doesn't really matter, but it was around 70, maybe not even
Very
picking
low.
up. Right. Yeah. Like she was going to die any minute, in my opinion. almost agonal breathing. Like that's how close to death she was. And I wasn't mistaken. I know what it looks like. That's what it looks like. I was like, oh, great. This is awful. Because her children were talking to me about like, when can we get her PT? Literally. That's what one of the questions I asked. When can we start PT?
Hospice and PT, are they compatible?
No. No, actually people on hospice can get PT, but she was actively dying. It just told me that they had no idea that she was so close to death, right? So I get her situated in the bed. She's fully unconscious. She's comfortable, but I need to go to the kids. And I'm talking to them about, listen, your mom is actively dying. She's probably not going to make it through the night. Like whoever you need to call, get here, I'm sitting there talking to them. And I'm like, I'm not even going to leave because I know she's going to die like any minute. So I'm just going to stay here, document. It's going to take a couple hours anyway.
What was the cause, the disease? Pancreatic cancer?
Metastatic colon cancer, I think. Yeah.
Okay.
It was years ago, but something like that, I think. Yeah. And I was just sort of waiting there for her to die so I could be there for the kids. And I just figured it'd be any minute. And then it was like a couple hours. My documentation's done. And I'm like, well, she didn't die yet. This is crazy. But I guess I'm thinking this in my head. I'm not saying this out loud. So I tell the kids, listen, I'm actually done with my documentation. So I really do have to go. But they had family on the way. I told them what to expect and what they can do and to call us when she dies. I go into her room. I say one quick little, I'm not like a prayer over people, but I felt really bad for this family. And I just wanted her to like pass or die peacefully. I put my hands on her bed and I closed my eyes and I basically talked to her and I was like, I hope you have a beautiful death. Like we're here for your kids, in my head. In that moment, I saw this flash of a thing, which I ignored. I'll get to it. A flash of this thing that I ignored because I'm not an angel girly. Okay. And
what's a flash?
It was like in my light? Head, like an image in my head.
Okay.
Okay. And then I left the next morning. No one had called the office to say she had died. No one made a death visit. So I was like, what the heck? So I'm thinking the family called the hospital. She's probably intubated in the hospital somewhere. They didn't let her die. I call the family. I'm like, what happened? You know, how'd the night go? What happened? And the son answered really happy. Hey, Julie, what's up? Blah, 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 blah. I hear people laughing in the background. I'm like, how'd the night go? You know, I didn't get a call. Oh, you know, mom slept through the night, which they knew she was unconscious. I don't know why they said sleeping, but mom slept through the night. She woke up this morning, says she's hungry. She was hungry for pancakes. So she's up eating pancakes. And I'm like, what? You know, I couldn't really hide my shock because that's how much I thought she was going to die. And they were like, yeah, she's up eating pancakes. I can hear them laughing. And I go, wow, okay, well, can I come see you guys? They were like, sure, because I needed to see this for myself. I get there. This woman is fully alert, oriented, walking, talking, eating pancakes. I thought maybe this is like the biggest rally I've ever seen or something, like this burst of energy. But I still was completely like, this is a miracle. I can't believe this because she didn't die. So I told the family again, bearer of bad news, being like, this is probably the rally. Right. She'll probably die soon, like breaking their hearts all over again. And then she didn't, though. She lived very well for 3 months. So she did die. 3 months later, but for 3 months,
wow,
she lived very, very well, didn't have many symptoms, didn't go back to the actively dying phase, was up walking, talking, and then died very peacefully 3 months later. She did go through like the last couple of weeks of her actively dying, but those 3 months she was well, lived well. So to me, I felt like I witnessed a miracle. And that flash in my head, again, this is not my norm, okay? I got an image of this huge being behind her bed that made me feel like gave me the feeling of power and strength. And like, the message was, this is mine. And I meant whatever they were, meant like she was theirs. I'm like, I've got this. And that happened in a split second. And of course, I cannot wait to hear what you have to say about this. My skeptical mind was like so much so that I ignored it completely. Like I didn't even act like it happened. Okay. I didn't pay any attention to it until the next day when she was fully alert and oriented and eating pancakes and then lived for another 3 months. It did make me be like, that thing that I saw might've been real. Because why did she live for 3 months? Why did I get that image? Why, and you know, honestly, I don't know why. And I'm not just saying that because I'm here with you and you're looking at me like, what? I always say to people, I don't know why. I don't know what it means. I'm not really declaring that like angels are for sure real. But I do want to say when things like that happen to me and they touch me and they make me feel like, wow, that was wild. That was my experience, you know? Tell me.
I have nothing to say. I mean, that's
yes, you do. You don't have anything to say.
Okay, I will tell you my one observation.
Okay.
And it's an observation of something I appreciate.
Okay.
In what a lot of people hope when someone is put on hospice or they're actively decompensating from already a bad position in the ICU. So not someone who's young and healthy and had a terrible accident that we can nurse back to health. Someone who's in a really bad place. The family wants miracles.
Yeah.
And I like that in this example, you discuss a miracle that you experienced, but the miracle is more of a realistic miracle. That the miracle was that she got a few more months.
Yes.
Not the cancer disappeared.
Yes.
Which is what people view miracles as. And I feel like that actually misleads people to making bad choices in end of life and throughout their lives.
Agreed.
So I actually appreciate that fact. That was my takeaway from that.
Okay, yeah.
But, you know, I'm being not religious person. I don't know what that means.
Yeah.
What do people who are religious, how are they different in their end of days?
They're not really different. Yeah, I would say they're not really different.
Are they more comfortable because they feel like it's tied to their religion, or?
It depends. So some people can be more fearful. I found some people that are very religious who talk a lot about the religion at visits seem to be more fearful. Some seem to have a lot of faith and a lot of comfort. So I think it's like your relationship to that religion and maybe to death. It does, people with some sort of faith in anything, really. It doesn't have to be whatever. It doesn't have to be anything
standardized religion.
Yeah, standardized. Yeah, seem to be more comforted. But generally speaking, this is a bold statement, but I think death is generally comfortable on hospice. Now, the actively dying phase, that last phase of life.
Yeah, let's discuss some of these terms.
Yeah.
What is actively dying?
Actively dying is the last phase of life. It's the one that no one talks about, it seems like, except for me. I'm just constantly saying actively dying all the time. It's like that last week, right? And most people are unconscious. Most people will have changes in how they breathe. They'll have terminal secretions, which is like a death rattle, changes in skin color, changes in temperature. Almost everyone will look like that at the end of life, unless you're dying from an accident or,
acutely.
Yeah. And ICU death looks different as well for the most part. But
because it's medically intervention.
Yes,
focused,
and they've already had tons of interventions usually. Most people will look like that, and most people don't know that's what it looks like. So they expect their loved one to be able to still be walking at the end of life, still be talking at the end of life. And that's usually not what's happening. They're usually unconscious. And the reason why it's so peaceful is because they're usually unconscious. We still give meds if we've been giving meds, and we'll transition medications to, being sublingual or through a patch or a sub-Q needle, something like that. So they're still comfortable if they were getting medications already. But most people are not rolling around, screaming or agitated, no matter what. Like, that's usually.
What about those with a psychiatric condition? Even then,
if we can get them comfortable. So I am like a very strong believer in being like super, super aggressive if someone cannot get comfortable. Terminal agitation is real, and it can happen to anybody. Now, there's certain diseases that more people are likely to have terminal agitation. Sometimes it's cognitive stuff. Sometimes it's stuff with the liver. Young patients can be like that. Psychiatric patients can be like that. And I think a good hospice will be aggressive as hell.
And planning for it.
And helping people understand, helping families understand. Sometimes people are just awake and agitated or asleep and not. And there's no in between. Very rarely are we going to just do that right away, right? But if that's what we're seeing, that's what I always try to explain to families, because they'll say, you just gave them medications till they died. You basically put them under till they died. And it's like, some people, that's what we have to do. If your goal is for them to be comfortable and you see that when they're awake every single time they're not, we will give them enough medication so they are asleep and comfortable. But that rarely happens.
Yeah. What about the death rally?
Yeah, the rally's the number one like phenomena that we see happen. It's like 1 in 3 people will have the rally.
Yeah, what's that?
It's when people look like they're getting close to death, like my lady with the pancakes, and then suddenly, boom, a burst of energy, and they are up walking, talking sometimes, or not sometimes, walking, talking. Their personality kind of comes back. They're hungry, and then they die shortly after. So why does
that happen so often?
I don't know.
Is there any literature or education as to why?
Not that I know of. Not that that's been like peer reviewed and,
wow.
There's theories. Cortisol bursts or I mean, a lot of people will say DMT. I don't know who's saying DMT is released. I don't even know if that's a real thing, but like.
Wrong podcast. That's on Joe Rogan.
Exactly. Whenever someone says that in my comments, I'm like, that you're just saying that. Yeah. No one knows that.
No, but usually we'll be like, whoa.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so that happens. Do you ever get people, you kind of touched on this earlier, saying you're just trying to shorten this, you're trying to save resources, you don't want my loved one to potentially get better, maybe even in the past in the ICU. Do you ever get that?
Yes, all the time. And I just have to continue to educate that. One, that's just not true. I mean, I don't know. And all I can do is show you through time that that's not what's happening here. Your loved one will, unfortunately, look, a lot of it's grief, right? Unfortunately, and I say this, a lot of this, your loved one will die no matter what we do. And I am sorry for that. And our job here is to help them die as peacefully as possible. There is clinical research behind giving morphine at the end of life, and if it hastens death, which has been proven, it doesn't. It doesn't. So, and we have this idea that like morphine is so easy to OD because of the abuse around narcotics, right, which is like a whole nother podcast and a passion of mine as well. But it's not that easy to overdose. Really, it's not, especially with what we're giving them on hospice.
Yeah.
The amount of morphine we're giving them, a doctor that I love, that I used to work with all the time, had a patient drink the whole entire bottle of morphine and sleep for 12 hours and wake up fine. Do you know what I mean? So it's like, I wouldn't recommend that.
Well, if you think about what dosages are, Dilaudid is 7 times stronger. Then you have fentanyl exponentially stronger.
Right.
So there's a lot of room there.
And we're not giving it intravenously, and their bodies are not functioning as well. So it's not like
it's not bioavailable for them.
It's just.
And again, you're doing it for a purpose.
Yeah.
And the purpose is not shortening anyone's life.
No.
The purpose is the comfort, which is ultimately what I think people want, but perhaps miss in the sea of misinformation, misconception, concern, emotions, etc.
That's also where I go to. I say, what is your goal is what I'll say. And usually they say, so they don't suffer and they're comfortable. And I say, that's amazing, because that is my goal too. That is what I'm here to do. I have no agenda whatsoever except for to make your loved one more comfortable and to make you understand how we're going to do that.
Outside of the story with the angel, has a patient ever left a lasting impact on you that you remember that patient forever?
Yes. I mean, so many.
Really?
I have.
What comes to mind?
Handfuls. Well, depends on where we're going to go with this.
Well, you tell me.
Yeah, let me think.
Guide us like an angel.
Yeah, let me think. There are patients that have, like, I have one shared death experience, which I didn't know was called that until someone told me what it was, where I feel like a shared death experience is when someone's dying, makes you kind of feel and take you with them in your mind. Okay. Mm. That has happened to me one time with one patient. So very lasting effect, because it was amazing and it was crazy.
Wow.
I know. I didn't tell,
high phenomenon.
I didn't tell anyone about this for years, except for my best friend, Jenny, because I trusted her. And then many people asked over the years, people kept asking me why I don't fear death, why I don't fear death. And there's many reasons why. But one of the reasons is this experience that I had with one of my patients, who I will say was probably one of my favorite patients. I do have favorites, I guess. So there's extreme things like that, right? That will have a lasting effect on me forever. And then there's things that are also extreme, but don't seem as extreme, right?
Well, wait, tell us about the shared death experience.
You do want to hear it?
Yeah. I know you told Jenny, but now you could tell a million more people.
I know. Okay.
If you're comfortable.
I'm comfortable with it.
Yeah.
It's in my book and stuff too. And I talk about it all the time, but I always, I am a woman of science too. So this stuff weirds me out.
Well, for example, I mentioned the high phenomenon.
Yeah.
This is, you see people go to music concerts, raves, etc. And some people are using drugs, Molly, MDMA, ecstasy, what have you, in order to feel close to others. But some people are going sober and the music is bonding them. The crowd effect is bonding them. And they feel like as if they're part of something larger.
Yes.
And I'm sure we've all experienced it to some degree, whether it's cheering for a sports team or being at a concert. Medically, it's hard to explain, right? Because like what's happening that you feel part of some grand movement that is larger than yourself? It doesn't make sense. But it's happening. Mm-hmm. So we can observe it, we can discuss it, and social psychologists talk about it. Jonathan Haidt on this channel came on and we talked about it. So this could be an example of that.
Kind of the stuff I live for. That is like what I feel. Even just meeting a patient and connecting and laughing and seeing their home, I leave there almost like there was a high. Like I almost feel physically high from the interaction because it was so beautiful just interacting with someone. So, but the shared death experience. So as a patient who we, again, younger patient, didn't have much family, came on with a pancreatic cancer diagnosis, and he was a hoarder and needed a lot of help. And our team, his hospice team came around him and like found distant relatives to come in for the weekend. And he, for whatever reason, because he was sort of like surrendering everything, was able to like let go and let us all clean out this hoarded apartment. Okay. So the next time I saw him, he was like in this nice apartment that is now clean after 30 years, and he could move around and it was safe and it was beautiful. So that really got the relationship going with the whole team. And then he lived well for probably 9 months, which is kind of unheard of for pancreatic cancer. They usually come on too late and all these things. But for whatever reason, he lived really well, was fully alert and oriented. We talked about all types of things, just like life and existential stuff. And he talked to me about his fears and his life prior to getting sick and how being sick really helped him like feel free in a way. And I say all this because we got really close and I really loved him. And on his last days, we had a continuous care nurse in the house with him 24 hours a day, and he was unconscious. And I could tell the last time I was there, he would die that day. I could just tell by the way he was breathing and whatever. So I sort of said my goodbyes to him in my head, told the continuous care nurse, hey, can you text me when he dies just so I know what's going on? And I left to go to my car to go to my next patient. And in the car, I just stopped for a second. I kind of like looked at this apartment. And again, I said in my head, like, thank you, so-and-so. I'm so happy, like, we got to meet and whatever. And then all of a sudden, in my head, I heard his voice. And I can, like, feel it. It almost makes me cry almost every time I tell the story because I could feel his excitement. And it was like he was smiling in my head and he was going, oh my gosh, Julie. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Like almost whispering, I can't believe this. I cannot believe this. This is so amazing. If I only would have known. If I only would have known. And I just started like weeping in my car because the feeling was so overwhelming. It was like pure peace, joy, love. It was like he was flying and soaring and kind of laughing and giggling. And he wasn't saying much except for, oh my gosh, Julie. And he kept saying my name, which I think really kind of what got me all like weird. Well, kind of like, what the hell's going on? Because he kept saying my name. Oh my gosh, Julie. Oh my gosh. And the message was basically this. Oh my gosh, if I only would have known, I wouldn't have been so afraid. And I could feel how free he was. And I knew how not free he felt in his life and how he struggled with mental health all his life. And then he basically got sick and then he felt free again and then he died. And then, so that was it. I'm crying in the car. I'm feeling all these things and then it was done. And I sort of sat in my car like shell shocked, like, what the hell was that? And then my phone beeped and the nurse inside was like, so-and-so just died. And I thought, I know. I feel like he showed me that he did. And that's it. Then I never said anything to her. I never said anything to anybody, but it changed how I felt. It felt very real at the time. And it was like a beautiful thing that I felt like he gave me.
So how does that impact your relationship with thinking about death?
Well, I've always felt connected to something greater than me, whatever it is. I'm not particularly religious, although I did grow up somewhat religious. But that's not, I've always felt, ever since I've been a little girl, I've been like this little girl who's like asking about life's biggest questions. Like, why am I here, mommy? Like, where do we go when we die, right? And I've always felt like I've gotten answers as a little girl. I've always felt connected to something I couldn't see and something greater than me. I've always felt homesick for a place like that feels like home that I can't quite remember. And experiences like this kind of reiterate like, oh yeah, maybe I'm not crazy. Maybe that is what's going on. And you know what? If I'm wrong, I don't care.
What do you mean if you're wrong? A place you got to be. What place you got to be?
Like, I feel like if I'm wrong about there being an afterlife, if I'm wrong about me experiencing that this wasn't real, I almost don't care. It's like, it's okay. I'd rather like believe in something beautiful that I feel really connected to than try to prove that it's not real.
Why is it so often that when there's a couple that's lived together for a long period of time, when one goes, you almost always see the other one within a year pass?
Well, I think, isn't there like research that shows that there is like broken heart syndrome, first off, where people can have
Takasobo's cardiomyopathy. So that does happen, but that's usually like a very stress-induced acute phenomenon. Like you get bad news in the moment and you drop dead. But more so, like my grandfather and grandmother, my grandmother passed away after a long battle with heart disease, strokes, etc. And then my grandfather, 2 months later, was running to answer the door at age 90, slipped, fell, broke his hip. And, you know, at 90 years old, if you're breaking a hip, blood clot, et cetera, and then all that. So what is that? Is it just they're so connected in their daily activities that they end up dropping some of those things? Or is this something that's trained in our minds that's not bearing out in reality?
I think it depends, but generally speaking, change is hard for anybody. If you're elderly and then you're with someone for a very long time, and then so that's a huge change. So I think change is really hard on anyone. Right. And then you're already elderly, so your end of life-ish is kind of near, right? Then something traumatic happens, it's a big change. Depression is real, and I think that can affect us. It affects how we sleep, affects how we eat, affects how we function in life, which again will make us deteriorate. And I think... but I don't really know. That's just what.
That's a logical answer. You talked about this one very moving case, but then you said there's other ones that are just simple and yet they have a big impact. What are those?
Yes, those are just people who say like a really heartfelt thank you. You know, like I had a guy who I sat down and like really talked to, even though he was super, super hard of hearing and super slow to respond. And in all honesty, I was like kind of annoyed in my head, like, oh my God, how long is this going to take? But then at the end, he like grabbed my hand and said, you know, I've never had a healthcare worker listen to me and hear what I had to say. Thank you. Like that stuff is like, you know, dagger to the heart or whatever you want to say. You're like, one, I feel so bad for like thinking rude stuff in my head about this guy. But two, this is what I'm talking about. This is the only thing that matters in life sometimes is what I feel like. Or the patient who like, I had a patient whose last words, because he like died seconds later, were thank you to me because I covered him up with a blanket, you know, or patients who just made a joke. I had a guy once, it's the best thing ever. I had a guy, I had to check out a catheter in his penis because he had a catheter in his penis. So I just said, I have to check your catheter, blah, blah, blah. Make sure he knew what I was doing. And he goes, okay, well, 1 second. And he screamed for his wife. And he goes, honey, get the magnifying glass. And I was like, magnifying glass? And he goes, well, you want to see it, don't you? What?
I mean, dirty jokes happen.
Dirty jokes happen. Yeah. And like, I will never forget that man ever. So it's like stuff like that too,
In getting a text, because you get texts notified if someone passes.
Yeah.
You're out with your friends at dinner and they're like, oh, so-and-so just passed. How do you deal with that? Or is it just...
I don't actually do that. So I keep my work phone away from me.
Got it.
Yeah. The only way I think I can like survive, that's another thing I should have said. The only reason why I can like love nursing and hospice nursing specifically is that I don't do stuff like that. I keep my work phone only on if I am working. So if I'm not working, it's not on. And I'm going to know that other nurses can do a good job and take care of. Yeah.
Yeah, because you need the teamwork component of it.
Yeah, I think all nurses and anyone who works in healthcare needs to have good boundaries, good work-life balance.
Have you ever got an interesting confession from someone?
No, I wish. People always ask me that, and I don't have it.
Yeah, I don't feel like that's something that people do readily.
Yeah.
At least not to a healthcare worker, because we're not part of their life as much as their loved one perhaps is.
Yeah.
And also... So some people play up the confession thing because they say, oh, they told me something incredible. But a lot of times with end of life, there's hallucinations, there's psychosis, delirium, and they might not be telling you something that's real at all.
Yeah. I mean, I've never really, like any kind of story or thing I say that like feels like a lesson is always like over time and intermittent. It's never been like someone grabs my hand and says like, let me tell you the greatest lesson I've learned in life. It's never like that. At least for me, it's not.
What's the worst part of being a hospice nurse?
Charting. Really. It really is, because you have to
You're dealing with death. People are losing their lives. You're having complex conversations, and yet charting is the worst.
Charting is the worst. And if I didn't have to chart, I still love my job, but it would be the perfect job. Charting, because it's against it's for all towards Medicare guidelines, and they're insane. And of course, your company only cares about, this is awful to say, but only cares about getting paid and getting money.
Well, that's what the company does.
Yeah, that's what the company does. And whether it's for profit or not, they both are like that. But anyway, so it's a lot of like, you have to do everything exactly, and it's annoying and torturous to me.
Have you had to do a lot of chest compressions?
Yes, in the ICU, not on hospice. Yeah, in the ICU.
And when you do them, what do the family members around you do? Are they like, keep going no matter what? Or
yeah, I mean, in the ICU, they're hooked up to so many things that well, no, we did have people die. I just think we kind of bring them back because I think they're already hooked up to so many things that it's kind of like momentarily, every once in a while, we could kind of almost see it coming, and we would kind of talk to the family before, because you could almost see that like, hey, this might happen, so let's talk it through. And then eventually, only twice, I think, did we actually stop and the person did die. And one of the times, a fellow was so amazing. We could kind of see it coming. We kind of prepared the family, but the family still said, yes, we want, if his heart does stop, do everything you can.
Yeah.
And we kind of explained like, okay, we will, but here's how it's going to go. There's going to be cycles, and like eventually maybe we have to stop the cycle. So we knew what was going on. This person was not coming back. So the fellow basically like ran the code like a few cycles through, and then eventually like looked at the family and they said like, okay, we could stop. But we all kind of knew we were doing it just because the family, wanted to see that we tried.
Are slow codes a thing?
They seemed like in the ICU, it felt like.
What's your definition of slow code?
Seeing it kind of, we kind of know what's going to happen before it does.
No. People have this term, slow code, where they say, oh, well, the staff knows that person's going to die and they're being forced to perform chest compressions and they're going to take their time.
Oh, I don't think so.
Does that ever happen?
I don't think so.
Yeah, I've never seen it happen, but I get that question asked to me. So
yeah, no, I don't. I mean, at least from my experience, which again, I haven't been in the ICU for 8 or 9 years, so maybe it's different. But back then, we kind of knew what was going on, but we weren't like we're just barely doing it because we did it.
You did it, yeah.
But it's still. I mean, those were still hard. I hated those days. I felt you're so conflicted. At least I was. I was so conflicted. I'm like, oh man, this is awful.
Are there hospice nurse retreats? Do you guys have a group?
I'm sure there are. I don't go to them. I don't go to them.
I needed to ask what that's like. Like what are you guys doing?
I
Swapping
don't
stories?
go to them. I had a retreat. I made my own retreat once. And then after that, I was like, I don't think we're going to
What was that retreat?
It was just educating about death and dying, and myself and hospice nurse Penny, another hospice nurse who were kind of like-minded, and we did a retreat together. A lot of times, I hope I don't hurt anyone's feelings, but a lot of times what I find is like hospice seems to be related to I get invited to a lot of grief stuff, which is fine, but that's not my expertise. Like I'm not a therapist. Like I'm not like an expert in how to grieve or how to do it well or whatever. But I do find that there's a lot of like people in that space who are very much like, let's hold space and and I'm not really like that. I don't really like, I'm more of like a straight shooter. Like,
where'd you grow up?
Pennsylvania.
Oh, you feel Brooklyn.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. That's a great compliment. Yeah. So it's like, I don't always, I'm still very, like I said, I still live presently. I pray, I meditate, I do all these things, but I'm not like super sensitive, I guess.
I know what you mean.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of people that are very spiritual to a high level where it's a little bit too far. But if it works for them. Right.
But I'm just not into it. Right.
Yeah.
So like, I don't want to sit around a circle and be like, and sing Kumbaya. And like, I'm just like, and whenever I'm in that kind of space, I'm like, oh, you guys aren't going to like me very much because I'm just not going to be like that.
Oh, my friend who's from upstate New York asked to ask you a question. In his upstate community, they have a belief that if someone's passing, you have to open the window for the soul to escape. Is that a common belief? Because I never knew about it.
I never knew about it until I started talking about this online, and everyone always asks me that.
Oh, they do? This is a thing.
People always ask me, do I open a window? Do I open a window so the soul could leave?
Oh, yeah. So
and I always say no.
You don't, because you trap it and you're evil.
I trap it and I'm evil, and I put it in a jar. No, I'm just kidding. I just don't do it because I'm not going to explain to the family, I'm opening a window so their soul can leave, right? Because not everyone's going to want to hear that. So I just don't do that. Unless they ask, hey, if they ask me, hell yeah, I'll open a window so the soul can leave. But I'm not doing it unless you ask.
Got it. Okay, so that's a little bit misinformation.
Yeah, but a lot of people, see, I think if hospice nurses are doing that without the family asking, they're incorrect and they need to be punished. No. But they just shouldn't. I just think that's wrong. I mean, not everyone believes in a soul. Not everyone believes in like, oh, well, that's like a wives' tale. Like we don't do that kind of stuff.
So to me, there's a difference between misconception and misinformation. Misconception is people have a belief that morphine is shortening life. What's full-on misinformation that's out there about end of life?
That maybe, I'm not sure if this is what this would be one, but like hospice kills people. There's definitely whole groups dedicated to proving that like hospice kills people.
Really?
For profit.
Why do they do that?
Why would they do it?
Why does this group exist? Is that is there any truth?
Because they really believe that. No, there's no. There's no truth. In fact, people who stay on hospice, they like the hospice company gets more money if you live. That doesn't make any sense. People don't get less.
You're like, it's against their financial interest.
I'm like, I mean, not that I care about that, but that's like literally not right. The longer you stay on hospice, the more money they get. So particularly if you don't need a lot of stuff. So I don't know. I think it comes from grief, and there's no talking to them because I've tried a bit because these groups really pick out people like me who's in the, so like they will do whole campaigns where they try to like take me down, take hospice nurse Penny down.
What are those campaigns like?
They're like sending a bunch of people into our comments, reporting our pages, reporting us to the nursing board.
Oh, what do the comments say?
That we kill people. that we murder people. Hospice murders people. You kill people. That's mostly it. It's mostly about murder.
So it's a lot of ridiculous.
A lot of ridiculous. It's hard to take even serious. It's like I don't even know where to start.
Yeah, that's messy. You mentioned when we were talking outside about wanting to educate the medical field from a zoomed out perspective, nurses, doctors, about end of life care, how to make the world a better place. What do you want to teach them? Like, a lot of them are listening right now.
Oh, wow. So much stuff. So if I'm speaking only to other
HCPs,
hospice workers or no?
No. Hospital care providers. Whatever. Okay. I don't know what HCP stands for.
Me neither. Because there's different. It depends on who I'm talking to.
Nurses and doctors that are interested in end of life care that are not good at it.
Well, one, hospice doesn't do everything. So that's one thing I hear a lot of other healthcare professionals say. Like, hospice will take care of it. We'll sign you up for hospice and they'll take care of it. And we don't take care of it. And
what is it?
It is taking care of their loved one 24 hours a day.
Oh, got it. Okay.
Yes. So like many people think that that's what hospice does. And that's what hospice definitely does not do. No hospice does. Mm-hmm. They will not be with you 24 hours a day. So that's one. Two, you don't always necessarily need morphine just because you're dying. I'm a big morphine girl. Like, give me all the morphine. So I'm not like anti-medication, but I think it's a misconception that just because you're dying, you're going to need medication. That is not true. And just because you're actively dying does not mean you need medication. People don't need morphine just because they're actively dying. Mm-hmm. So that's another misconception. You need to use the words death, dying, dead. People need to hear those words and not passing or gone. You need to use the words death, dying, dead. They only sound taboo because we don't use them. We need to use them. And I think we need to be a little more upfront with not just prognosis, because I think a lot of people probably are, especially if they work in the area, but explaining what their progression will look like. I don't think many people understand that. And I think we take for granted as healthcare workers that people understand what the progression will look like, what it means, and just be a little more open to talking about end of life. And I always say this is still not saying death, dying, dead, but it does make it easier. Saying end of life journey. Everyone has an end of life journey. Yours may be happening soon. We don't know for sure. Right? We can always say, because we don't know for sure. That is the truth, technically. But we don't know for sure, but I still think it's really important we talk about what you would like if X, Y, and Z happened. I mean, everyone needs to have that conversation. I think anyone who gets diagnosed with any kind of life-limiting illness should have that conversation up front and then continued over time.
Should we have that conversation with people without a life-limiting illness?
Great point.
Because I guess life is a life-limiting illness.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, I mean, yes. If everyone's willing to, let's all talk about it.
Well, how would, you talk about in your book, Planning for Death. What is planning for death?
That. I mean, well, so generally speaking, if you and I are just talking about it.
Like, plan for my death.
Yes.
Help me plan for my death.
No, have someone in your life who knows all of your passwords for all of your things. Your phone, like your phone password, okay?
Wow, I didn't even think about that.
Yes. Where is your keys? Where's an extra key? What's your passwords to your bank accounts? Who's your beneficiary to your bank accounts? Passwords to any investments you might have, like all of that, because someone is going to have to do those things when you're gone. And if you suddenly go, it's going to be, it eventually gets done, but it's a lot of stress and a lot of work. Mm-hmm. How do you want to be buried? Do you want to be buried? Do you want to be cremated? Would you want to be intubated? How long would you want to be intubated for? Would you want trial tube feeds? Would you not? I mean, I could, like, the list is like a little overwhelming, but like that is the stuff I think even as a healthy, however old you are, you should be having with someone. And of course, because you're healthy and young, it's going to change over time. But there's things like the passwords, right? Or beneficiaries to any of your finances, that should be done now. Should be done now.
What in scenarios, I see this play out on shows and I'm always like, consult a bioethics person. What happens when a patient has an advance directive of, I don't want cardiopulmonary resuscitation, and a family who's the healthcare proxy or power of attorney, whatever word you want to choose, says, I want it.
And the person's still conscious and awake, or
No. The person's out. Their heart is about to stop, and
we have to follow what the
advanced directive says, or what the power of attorney, healthcare proxy.
I think what the proxy says.
Even though it's against the patient's wish.
I don't know.
So it's never happened in that scenario.
It's never happened to me.
Well, it just happened on the pit, which is why.
What did they do? Didn't they still do it?
They had to do what the people were saying.
Yeah.
Even though it was kind of against, and then ultimately they came around, and it ended up being in a way where everyone agreed. But initially it didn't start that way.
Yeah. I'm sure it's happened, but I've never actually run into that. But I've always been told that we're supposed to do what the person who is like alive and talking to us, even if it's going against. But doesn't that make sense?
Well, so it doesn't, because you know how you're always allowed to change?
Yeah.
Like even if you're dying, and like as you're dying, you could say, no, I want it all now. You're allowed to make that change. So doesn't the fact that you're giving someone else the proxy end up being you making that decision and should be changed at any
Yes,
time?
this is why it's very important you give that proxy to someone
who
that
actually
will
understands.
not do that and who actually understands. I always say, I actually don't have this written anywhere. I should. Everything else is written about my sister. My sister's going to be able to do all the things for me, but she doesn't know healthcare, so it's known that my best friend Jenny, who also heard about the angel story,
Okay.
will be bedside. If I ever get in some kind of freak accident and I'm intubated, Jenny, I'm like, sorry, girl, you gotta come out here and like be the person, because I trust you the most as far as making decisions that
Yeah, that's
clear.
hard. I wonder who I would use. Maybe one of the doctors I train with or something.
That'd be good.
Yeah.
Well, I have a really, not a really big fear, but being intubated, we used to like, they would do rounds and do like a sedation vacation on people that were like fully vented, like on SMI, like just fully vented, not on pressure support, like full, and they would lose their shit, of course, because they feel like they're suffocating, even though this machine's breathing for them. Anyway, so that is like one of my big fears. I never want that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. I will be intubated if I have to be for certain things, but
obviously in hopes of recovery.
Yeah. But
yeah, that's tough. I wouldn't want that either. I mean, quality of life.
What do you think about that?
Well, I think everyone's allowed their own choices.
No, I mean, what do you think about the sedation vacation and like keeping them on? I always thought I felt like doctors that did that were like cruel.
Well,
there has to be a way to do it.
I've never in my ICUs ever experienced sedation vacations. We did breathing trials to see if someone could breathe on their own to get them off of the ventilation. But that was in hopes of getting them off. Yes. Versus a true sedation vacation, which I don't think we did.
We had certain attendings that would do that. Only certain attendings
interesting.
would.
I don't know what the current evidence base for that is, because I'm not in the ICU anymore. But yeah, that's interesting. It sounds like it would be tough.
Yeah.
Because I don't know who that's helping.
Yeah. Eventually we would change the vent settings. Eventually, if they could prove that maybe something, they were, but it was still like I just saw a lot of suffering
too. Yeah. What's a tip for me? What's the best way to have your body taken care of after you die?
What do you mean by that?
Buried, cremated. What other cool avenues are there? Is there anything that I'm missing that there's interesting?
There's like
what's a cool thing that you've seen people do that you're like,
I like the green burial. However, I've heard it's like maybe not that great for the environment anymore.
What's the green burial?
Where you're just like buried in the ground.
Like isn't that a traditional burial?
No, like there's
without the casket?
Yeah, without the casket, without being embalmed. You're like shrouded and buried in the ground. I think it looks really beautiful. But I've heard that the way we decompose might actually not be great for soil. I could be saying all of this wrong, people. I keep looking into the camera being like, listen. But I always like the idea of that. I like cremation myself, but also like not great for the environment. I think there's more greener options that are probably more expensive and a little harder to find depending where you are in the country.
Like flash frozen or something?
Yeah, or there's like the water ones too, where you're not soaked in water, but the way they maybe decompose your body is with water pressure. Yeah.
Wow.
So, Generally speaking, though, if you want to save money and make it like most cost effective, plan ahead. You don't want to do it last minute. Last minute is always more expensive.
Really? There's an upcharge for it.
I wouldn't say that, but
for
everyone kind of knows that.
grave site space and casket, or what you say plan ahead for financial, like what are you saving money
Yeah,
on?
I mean, I feel like
The funeral service?
yeah, all of it. I think I don't actually know the ins and outs of like what they're like upcharging you for and and I don't even know if they would call it an upcharge, but I just think at the last minute, all of the services and things will be
Well, real estate
more
goes up in
expensive.
price.
Yeah.
So
if you have it already bought, already planned, it'll make it easier.
do you
and less
ever,
expensive.
this is so off a tangent, but my mind is like that. Do you ever see pets have a unique relationship with someone who's dying?
Yes, I just did a video about this.
No way. Tell me.
It's definitely a thing. I've seen multiple pets. So like the littlest things would be, being protective over their owners, lying with them, laying under their bed. But then I've seen a few take on their owner's symptoms. So nauseous, not eating, not drinking, vomiting, not wanting to walk if their owner's like not walking, not taking them, and acting sick, basically acting like they're sick. I've heard, I wasn't there, but I've heard that after their loved one dies, them, laying on the bed for a long time, like staying with the bed where they were, howling.
I hope my dogs cause a nuisance if I die unexpectedly.
Babies.
Just make a lot of barking noises.
You hope they do?
I hope they do. I hope they wake up the whole neighborhood.
I just did a video the other day where I was like, this is a little bit of a side note, but I was kind of howling, crying for whatever reason. But one of those like guttural cries that you have. And I got quiet because I was like, what is that noise? And other dogs in the complex were like howling.
Because you were crying.
Because I was crying.
What were you crying about?
I had just broken up with my boyfriend. We broke up.
That's sad.
And I came back to our apartment that we shared together, and he was gone. Like basically, we said like, okay, you move out this weekend. I'll leave for a little bit. You leave, and I came back after he was gone, and he had left a note. And of course, like it was a amicable breakup, so it was like just sad.
Well, those are really sad.
Yeah. It's like, we love each other, but it's like not working. So I was like finally crying, and I was having one of those like guttural kind of moaning, howling cries.
Right.
And then that's when I like quieted down because I was like, what the hell is that? And it was dogs.
Wow.
It was dogs howling.
They knew.
I know.
Dogs always know.
Dogs are amazing.
Like when I'm sick and I'm laying there, the dogs act weird.
Really?
Yeah. And I'm not saying like sick, like seriously sick, but like if I have strep throat or something from one of my patients, probably.
Yeah. I feel like they do. There's been a cat in Rhode Island. I just did a video about this. That's why I know all this stuff. There was a cat in Rhode Island who predicted 100 deaths. So it wasn't a friendly cat.
Oh, like it would, if it came up to you that you were dying.
Yeah. Oscar
Keep
the
that
cat.
away from me. My dad's name's Oscar. God damn it.
Yeah. Oscar
Get
the
this cat away from me.
And it would like not be cuddly at all to anybody, but then when someone was dying, it would be like, whoop, jump on their bed and like lay next to them, and then they would die.
Oh my God. I wonder what they probably, like that actively dying means something different to them.
So
it's like a pheromone.
They were saying that maybe they could smell the ketosis. That's one thing that I think is really cool about death. Now, it doesn't happen to everybody because not everyone gets into ketosis, but I see a lot of really elderly people get into like this phase of actively dying, maybe even before, because they're kind of so slowly doing it and slowly not eating and drinking and slowly getting into ketosis where they have like euphoria and it's really peaceful, really, really quiet. It's beautiful.
Well, I'll say this.
Yes.
From our conversation, I'm not at nothing to fear, but I'm less fearful.
That's great.
And I think I'm more empowered to have a conversation with my patients about it. So I thank you for that.
Thank you.
Yeah. Is there a place you want to push individuals to keep following along your journey of life and death?
I think my YouTube channel is my favorite. Okay. I mean, I have more followers on TikTok, but so, I mean, I love all my socials, right? I'm anywhere.
And what is the handle?
At Hospice Nurse Julie.
Okay.
Yeah. And my YouTube channel is, to me, the most informative, and where I go live every Thursday so I can answer, live questions. So
What's a weird one that you got recently?
weird question.
Yeah, since you feel live.
It's been coming up a lot where they ask, why did my loved one make a really scared face right before they died? That just recently, I got that like multiple times. And my answer to that is one, I don't know, of course. I don't really know. Yeah. But what I will say is I do think this whole when someone's in the actively dying phase, like I said, especially if they're right before they die, their consciousness is not, it's not who you know and love anymore. To me, it is a body. It is a dying body. And that dying body is doing a bunch of stuff to die. So I think, is it a face of actual fear? I don't think it's a face of actual fear, yeah. Right? It's like you love this person and you see them going. So, but generally speaking, people do all types of weird stuff before they die. They're twitching, and if you're not used to seeing it, of course you're like, they're afraid. This is awful. This is whatever. And generally speaking, I just say, just remind yourself that this is a biological body that is systematically shutting down and dying.
Fair. Okay. Well, people will be tuning in.
Yeah.
So thank you. Hope you enjoyed the conversation.
I did. Thanks. You.
Mortician Caitlin Doughty and I reacted to the hit HBO show 6 Feet Under about a family who runs a funeral home and maybe speaks to the dead. Click here to check that out. And as always, stay happy and healthy.